So hello, everyone. I would like to welcome you and those who are joining us from Zoom into our panel sessions, Power in the Pivot. My name is Denisa Purba. I'm a second-year PhD student in civil engineering, and today I will be the moderator of these panel sessions. Before we begin, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items. The panel will start with a short introduction from each panelist, and after that, we're going to open directly the Q&A sessions. If those of you who join from Zoom, if you have any questions, please put it on the chat box and please stay muted. So in our panel session, Power in the Pivot, we are very honored to have three panelists joining us today. I would like to welcome Kerisha Bowen as an attorney in intellectual property and technology at Dentons, and also I would like to welcome Patricia Jones as an associate director for research at the Beckman Institute of Advanced Science and Technology at the UIUC. And also I would like to welcome Carl Pao as a vice president global strategy with health economics and outcomes research at GOR at the UPFI Inc. We will start letting the panelists spend 1 or 2 minutes to introducing themselves by telling us about their current position, education, and career path. We can start maybe from Kerisha. Yes.
Can everyone hear me? I don't know. Okay, great. So I am Kerisha Bowen. Just a little brief summary about me. I have a PhD in organic chemistry from Temple University. My graduate advisor was Franklin Davis. He is, if anyone understands organic chemistry, has a named reaction, has his own oxazirity, and so he is very well known in chemistry. The big thing about Dr. Davis when I started is I was told he doesn't work with women. So he took a chance on me. And I was able to run his lab like a manager because all the guys were fighting and I kind of stopped that. He loves me now, we're still friends to this day. After my PhD, I did an interactive fellowship, which is a teaching postdoc. And my thoughts and plans were I was going to teach. When I graduated, just so you know, at Temple, I was the first Black woman to get a PhD in chemistry from Temple University, right? Graduated, worked in academia, and if there was any type of discrimination, I faced it in academia. So I was like, all right, time to pivot, because I was done. So that's why I did my interactive fellowship. And now I actually work in patent law, and this is the field where science and technology, or science and the law actually intersect. And as part of some of the things that I do, so there's patent law, and then there's some things that are related to patent law, where, we have a lot of politicians that are deciding what happens with funding and with research. And so one of the things that I've done, which is why sometimes I get to meet great politicians, is the past director of the House National Resource Committee. I actually taught him how to properly pronounce ethylene. And so I've met wonderful people just based on that.
Hi, I'm Patty Jones. I'm currently the Associate Director for Research here at the Beckman Institute on campus. I did my bachelor's here in psychology, but as a psychology major, I knew right away I did not want to be a therapist. I wanted to do something related to engineering. So I discovered the field of human factors engineering. I took a bunch of industrial engineering and math and computer science classes as a psych undergrad, which enabled me to go to grad school in industrial engineering. And I got my master's and PhD at Georgia Tech. Then I came back here as on the faculty, and I was a professor for about 9 years here at U of I, which was a great experience. But then I pivoted and I went to NASA Ames Research Center as a manager. And so I was there for 11 years. Then I pivoted again, coming back here to U of I to work at Beckman. And as I have said to people, the only thing more fun than NASA is working at Beckman. So be glad to tell you more about that when we get to questions. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carol Bao, and I'm a thought I would work for a pharmaceutical company. And I actually did not know health economics and outcomes research is actually a field that you can actually go into. So how did that happen? It's just a lot of sort of I thought going into consulting is pretty cool. So I think this part is probably I missed that. So right after I graduated from economics major in University of Illinois in Chicago, my dissertation was more in health policy. Actually, it was specifically around childhood obesity policy. And then, I thought, consulting is really cool. I don't think I'm cut out for the academic, track. So I went to consulting in Boston. And I thought it's actually consulting for something else. But then I realized, oh, it's actually consulting for this. And we work with a lot of the clients, that's actually pharmaceutical companies. And then, that's where, a year after that consulting experience, I came back and joined Abbott Labs at the time and AbbVie. And I've been with the company almost gonna be 14 years. And the cool thing is, in our company, we have patent lawyers as well as human factor engineers. So, which I did not know, of course. So I definitely worked through as an individual contributors to become a manager and kind of work through the ranks. I think my pivot may be relatively small, but I learned a lot in terms of, how do you raise your hands and don't let opportunities slip away. So happy to talk more when we go into the discussions. Thank you.
So thank you, panelists. I think we can just go straight to the Q&A session. If you have any question, just raise your hand to the panelists.
I have a question for my fellow panelists. I want to know more about, I think it's really sad that you had such a bad experience in academia that you wanted to pivot away from it, because that's what I hear at Beckman a lot is, oh, we need to, increase the pipeline and keep people in, and we want to be a good place to be. So I'm really saddened to hear that you had a bad experience, but I guess, but your pivot to law was kind of like a search for justice, I'm guessing, something like that.
Okay. Yeah. So it's bad because it always kind of brings down the house. So yes, when I say I experienced all of the discrimination, including being called the N-word at work, right? So I was teaching and I shared an office with a white male, and I was eating lunch in my office one day, and well, even before that, let me start at the beginning of the year. They hired me and another Black woman at the same time at the year, and during our orientation, we were told that, we're not going to figure out who's who. We just call you both the affirmative action hires. And yes, that was said to us. And they did not bother to figure out who was who. So my mail would go in her mailbox, her mail would go in my mailbox. I would have stuff delivered to my office. She would have stuff. Like, it was just that we were not, she quit mid-semester. She was like, I don't even care. Like, I'm sorry to students, but I can't take this anymore. I finished the year out. And I remember this was the first day I was like, I can't do this anymore. I was eating lunch in my office, and the male faculty member was just like, where I'm from, it's be gone by sundown. And I was just like, okay, like, what do I do now? And I went through all of the steps, filed the EEOC, filed the complaint at the university, filed the EEOC eventually. The university did an internal investigation. They were like, yes, he did call you an N-word, but you and the other faculty member created an environment where he felt comfortable calling you that. So that was their official report of it. And so, yes, so once you talk to a university vice president and that's the response, it's just like, I can't be here anymore. This isn't for me. Yes. Okay, so yeah, so here's the turnover. So I left that school and went to another school, and a lot of, at that time, so it was like 2007, 2008, like that whole crisis. A lot of the faculty positions, they weren't really giving tenure track positions, so it was really hard. And I thought, okay, if I'm doing this, I'm going from adjunct to adjunct, and then what's my life going to look like 10 years from now? And he was like, I got to do something else. So I had this faculty position. It was 1 year. And I remember the chair of the department saying, like, listen, we're losing funding. So next year you can either be part-time with no benefits or just not here at all. Like, I don't know what you want to do. And that's when I was like, I'll get out of this altogether. And I Googled what else you can do with a PhD in chemistry, and I found patent law. Yes, yes, I know. And that's really what happened. And I saw that Notre Dame was doing this 1-year Master's in Science and Patent Law program. You know, a lot of times when you're looking at jobs, they're like, you need experience, and I'm like, I don't have any, I don't know what to do. So I found this program. It was 1 year. And I just emailed asking for more information. The director of the program called me. It was the first year that they started the program. And she said, listen, if you apply, you're in, I'll get you a scholarship, just come. And so I did. And I got recruited for my current position. So Duncan's recruited me directly from Notre Dame. And I appreciate it. And it's funny because, lawyers like to argue, right? And so they'll be like, are you okay? Like they're arguing. And it's not even about me. It's just like, someone disagrees with my point and we're arguing. And I'm like, fine. Like, I'm not being called the N-word here. Like, it's great. It's just like, I can argue points. Like, I'm just not being attacked just for being here. So I'm fine. Yeah. Yeah.
That's really inspirational.
Yeah.
I also think it's great that,
Okay.
I was gonna say, it's great that you then found a place that welcomed you.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
so important that you feel like you belong here and you're welcome. And that's so important and taken for granted. It's important to cover that. I'm really lucky because I felt like I was well supported throughout my different jobs. I mean, so I was an undergrad doing a bachelor's thesis here, did all these other classes, went to Georgia Tech, got a fellowship, had a female advisor, and she was on the tenure track at the time. And so we clicked right away. We had the same writing style. It was easy to co-author stuff with her. It was great. And then I ended up coming back here on the job market. I interviewed here at Illinois, at Iowa State, and Michigan. And I was going to get offers from all of them. But Illinois came in first. And I was like, well, this is a great place. It's collaborative and it's excellent. I felt like Iowa State was really nice, but not quite, as good as Illinois. And I felt Michigan is really good. But the culture I thought seemed kind of terrifying. It's like all the assistant professors seemed to be scared. And I was like, ew, this does not. Maybe now it's better, but it didn't have a good vibe when I interviewed there. So I ended up coming back here and I had a great time. I mean, tenure is very stressful. But I felt like my department head, did a good job of having a good process, and I had good mentors. I had all these informal mentors helping me. And the person who was most like me went up for tenure a few years before I did. And so I had a sort of similar case to her. So I felt like that was good. So that seemed like, okay, I'm set for life now, I'm tenured. But then along the way, I got divorced, and then I met my husband, and he moved here from Florida, and he was like, boy, I hate living in Champaign, Urbana. I was like, oh man. So then we had a baby, and then he had a friend who went to Apple, which was his dream job, from Wolfram to Apple. And his friend was like, oh, there's openings. In fact, there's a bonus program where if I recommend you for an interview and they hire you, I get a bonus. So it's like, ooh. And so at the same time, a few weeks after he saw that and was thinking about this, I saw an email on a listserv I was on that NASA Ames is hiring. I'm like, wow, it's like, kismet or whatever. So we both flew out to California, both interviewed, and then we both got job offers. I'm like, geez, can't beat this. So even though I was already tenured here, I quit, moved to California, and then I became a civil servant for the federal government. So I got sworn into the government. And again, after 1 year of probation, you're also tenured as a civil servant. So again, it's like, okay, I now have another tenure job, and I ended up quitting that too, which nobody does. But it was because I liked being at NASA, but I found out that in some ways it's really cutthroat. I mean, it doesn't seem like it would be, but kind of the way that money works in the federal government is Congress does line item appropriations, which I kind of thought, oh, Congress gives a bunch of money to NASA and they all figure what to do. No, Congress decides the International Space Station gets this, aerospace gets that, hypersonics gets this. And so there's all this constant fighting about stuff. And then during the time I was there, Sean O'Keefe was the head of NASA and demanded that we all move to full cost recovery. So suddenly things that used to be free cost $100,000 a day. And so people stopped doing them. And so this was a giant mess. So anyway, after all that kind of stuff, I was like, geez, coming back to U of I seems like it'd be awesome. And Beckman is really fun. So I felt like coming back to university is a fun job where I do all the fun stuff of thinking about research ideas and helping people develop proposals and working with students and postdocs to develop plans and do some mentoring. And also I have oversight over core facilities here. So it's always a great, creative, fun thing to do. And there's money constraints and stuff too, but it's nothing as bad as I had to deal with it. So I felt like overall, being at Beckman's been wonderful. And my sister is here, and now my brother is here, and my mom is still in Chicagoland. So it's been great. So I feel like I've been really lucky with everything. But the pivoting was always kind of a matter of timing. My students were all done when I left, quit to go to NASA. I had reached a good point at NASA to leave, and my husband had just gotten laid off. So either he found a new job or he moves here. So the timing to me was like a major factor in what I was able to do. So that's me.
Very hard to go after these two examples. I think I was talking to when we had a conversation before for sort of preparation. One thing I want to say when you talk about pivot in a corporate environment is to really don't wait for the moment that you feel like you're 100% ready, and also be. So let's put it this way: if I get to go back and do all things all over again, I think I will be more proactive and thoughtful and deliberate in thinking about what I want to potentially do. I started with very innocent, like, I had a good manager and he was a great mentor and learned a lot and having fun. I was like, this is just, day in and, getting promoted and, managing people. I'm like, this is good. Life is good, and don't really think about what I want to do or how I want to continue to develop myself. And the first time I think it came to me to say, what, I need to take charge of my career in a way, is, I was actually in my maternity leave, and I know that there is a role that is become vacant. And so I said, can I just raise my hand for that, right? So clearly, it's gonna be a bit more work, and I was having my second child and stuff, but I was like, what, I just want to raise my hand. And at first, my boss was like, yeah, no, okay. So I was like, fine, at least I tried. But later on, I think there's a lot of reasons, and then he's like, okay, so you're just gonna do both. You're not gonna transfer the job, but you're just gonna take this as additional responsibility. Which I really enjoyed, and I think it's good that that's the time I raised my hand. And the second example is very recently. This is truly a recent thing. So, so as a company, we actually kind of expanded, and then there's turnovers and people leave, and they created this new role for vice president for whatever the whole title, very long. So neuroscience and eye care and general medicine. So it's like, we're going to lead a team that's 25 people. And I have people in Irvine, Madison, and someone in Paris. And it's a lot of new products, and because we also have, we kind of merged with Allergan. So that position is open. And I was just like, yeah, okay. But a lot of my colleagues were like, Carol, why don't you give it a try? I was like, it's a lot of work to apply. You have to put in your application. I haven't, right? I'm like, I haven't updated my CV. I'm like, is it worth it? It's a lot of work. So all of these. So I was just like dragging my feet. I kind of didn't really want to. And this is where, like, and also I was like, am I the right person? I don't know, I'm ready for it, right? Because, if you look at the job description, there's like a lot of things they said. I check out and I was like, not sure. This one, I'm not sure. So that's a lot of these things. So I literally didn't really look into this for a while. I thought, this is not for me. I was just gonna just wait around and do what I do. It was still pretty good, right? Then, this one day, and I think my this one friend talked to me, and he's like, just more and more people asking me, why didn't I apply? It's just like a lot of people, just in the organization ask me. I'm like, well, how come you all feel like I should apply and I don't feel it? So I did a little bit more soul searching, and I think, it's not an never, right? And maybe I'm not gonna get it. Maybe something will happen, but I should sort of put my name in the hat. So I applied, and it is a lot of work because you have to really, like, it's the same interview process and all of that. I did not know whether I'm gonna get it, but through the process, I really appreciate it because, you know, it was Catherine was saying, it's like you get a time to really reflect on what you did. And I truly felt like, you know, when I talk to people having interviews, you feel some validation to say, which is a different topic, to say, hey, this is actually, I've done good. I did not know I did this good, you know. It's not just my friend think I'm good. Actually, you know, a lot of people that has never known me before all think I can do this job. So anyway, so this process, so that's my new role. So what I guess a takeaway may be a little bit exciting. One of the questions we were asked to prepare is to say, okay, when do you think it's the right time to pivot, right? Do you think you should have a list of things and pros and cons? I think we shouldn't even think about doing a list, period. Okay. I think as females, sometimes we think too much, and we are very self-critical. You know, we want to make sure that if I don't have at least 80% of chance getting it, I probably won't want to go for it. So I would really kind of go against what's that. I think we shouldn't think about the list, really in a way, sometimes go with your gut and maybe have some peer group, talk to your friends and then just give it a try, right? We talk a lot about failures. So if you have job moves that didn't work out, so what? It just one step in the role and you can zigzag and you will go to the ultimately what you want to do. So that's kind of just my add to these very hard to add. So that's all.
So yeah.
How do you approach that conversation in an interview if someone says, like, why have you transitioned so much in your role? How do you answer that question?
Yeah, so it's funny because when I meet people that want to get into patent law, they always think they have to make up some answer that they always wanted to be a lawyer. And I'm like, no, just be honest, because 99% of the time, the person just kind of fell into patent law too. And so I was just really honest about it. And I was like, yeah, have a PhD in chemistry. I need a job. And they were like, me too. I didn't know. And so I feel like there's a way just to be honest and not kind of make up a fake answer because people will understand that. And a lot of people, even though you don't think this, they kind of have the same experiences, especially because when you're in school, you're kind of taught, okay, go into industry or teach. And then there are these other positions that we're never taught about. We kind of hear about through whispers or in conferences or whatever. And just be honest that you just didn't even know that this existed or, you know, just whatever, just tell the story and people can relate to your honest story that way.
Yeah, I agree that, you know, just being honest about your evolution is totally fine. I think the other thing is, you know, I've been on a lot of search committees, you know, here at Beckman. And so I've seen a bunch of resumes. And by the way, you know, we all are real people reading resumes. So I guess, you know, Google or whoever has, you know, text mining happening. So it could be that when you have an AI bot text mining your resume, if it sees that you have a new job every single year for the last 8 years, that might be a signal that, you know, you can't stick with something, but maybe not, you know, so it's the context is always important. So I would just say that same kind of thing. It's like you've tried different things and you decide that it's time to move on, and that's what you decided to do. So I think presenting it as, you know, a conscious choice and an authentic experience for you is good. It doesn't sound good to say, well, I don't know, I got laid off, so I just randomly did something else. It's like, you know, you wouldn't want to say it that way, but it's okay to be exploratory. I would certainly say, so you're exploring new things, and that's totally fine.
No, I don't think this is doing anything for me. So, I will try to be a bit louder. I actually don't think it's a bad thing nowadays. No one look at your resume and think, oh, you have done different things. Actually, as something negative to speak for. No, clearly the company culture, you know, from an industry perspective, the culture does. Some companies like sort of loyalty and, you know, sort of see that as you are just a fly risk. You kind of, you know, especially if you move around just to get promotion, that's a different story. But really I don't think there's anything wrong, or from a, you know, I look at resume to say, oh, this person is somehow get penalized because they move around a lot. And actually, in a way, there's a little bit on the reverse side. that like through my interview, there are a lot of questions to say, okay, you're with the company this long. How do you think about innovation? I'm like, you innovate when you're within a company, why is that an issue? But that is almost the other way. People try to say, how do you increase your diversity of experience? So I totally agree. I think as long as you are thoughtful about why do you do this, you have a good story in a way, it doesn't matter.
I just want to add a follow-up question regarding that. So I was thinking that how career pivot actually is being interpreted with current company. Are there actually become kind of like opportunity for us to try career pivot? Is it going to be something that's company look at for us, like, oh, this person developed themselves, or how the, I mean, like recruitment or self-development that companies search for us, like how
Move within the company?
yeah, like, so because you mentioned that it is actually they're now accepting it and these things that it is like self-development. So so now is it like something that necessary for us to have that, or
Let me make sure I answer your question correctly. I think first of all, if you talk about movement within an organization, I definitely think it's something you don't do it just for the sake of it, first of all, right? But if you truly feel like there is a good opportunity you want to explore and expand, it's actually, that's the benefit. You are part of a big organization. I was talking to a lot of folks like in AV, we have all kinds of people come from different backgrounds, right? That's why I said we have human factor engineers, we have finance individuals, we have patent lawyers, we have chemistry, pharmacy, like all kinds of background. And then you sometimes you started with a role, and 5 years down the line, you're actually working for a different function. I think it's a benefit of having a big organization that have a lot of sort of different functions that you can find yourself in, right? I think to achieve that is you guys are doing that here today is networking, right? So I think the first thing is you need to know what's out there, right? That's if you so not only just do your day-to-day job, but know the organization, know the people, having coffees and lunches, informational, to know what are they doing, and that helps you to develop the network that needed potentially to see if that's kind of the job you want.
okay.
So yeah, absolutely. A lot of people, I also very encourage that, and at least like in AV, more and more in these industries, we are trying to, how to say, the leadership without authority. Like you want to see people that actually can lead above your function, because it's so important. So it's actually, I have a lot of team members. I encourage them to move to different functions, and and then we can connect later on and just to figure out more things.
Okay. There is another question. Yeah.
So when I think about pivoting, I think a lot of like uncertainty. So like, is that something that you felt during those times, and like how did you tackle it?
Yeah, so for me, a lot of it was trusting the process. So when I left academia and then I did the program at Notre Dame, I always have this picture of my car because I basically packed up my car and I lived in an apartment with what fit in the car. A bed did not fit in the car. So just now I was sleeping on an inflatable mattress the whole time, but I was like, okay, I know that somehow this is going to work out for me, right? And in large part, I kind of did, so I know you said don't think a lot, but I kind of did this risk assessment, right? Because I was like, okay, if I stay in this academic path, I've already seen it, I will bounce from, 1 year visiting faculty position to 1 year visiting faculty position. Maybe I'll get a permanent tenure job, maybe I won't. But if I do this, then I can see that the career path is this, right? So I was kind of like, okay, what would my path be 5 or 10 years from now? And I just knew that, okay, well, I have to, I can do this, it's 1 year. And I always say to myself, the time is going to pass anyway. So one of the things people are like, you always go back to school. I'm done with school, but the time passes anyway. And so that kind of makes me do that. And then going back to the last question, I will add, like, I think sometimes as women, even, a lot of times they talk about women not getting paid as much. And one of the things that they talk about is we don't actually fight for our salaries, right? So you have to be your own best advocate. And that even goes with experiences, right? So last year, I remember, like, with my company, they have an idea of what my career path is going to be. And we met at a table, and like a Zoom table, I should say. And I had a list of, I was like, okay, I want experience doing this, 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 and this. And I was like, I know we have it at the firm. I want to do these things. And they were like, well, but we want you to do these things. And I was like, I know that's what you want for me, but this is what I want for me. And I want this. And I've oftentimes had to advocate for myself, like even when it comes to my salary. So I love charts and tables. And they did not know that I had access to this information, but it was like, these are all the patent agents that are at this firm. This is how much money they bring in. This is how much money I bring in. You see them at the top of the chart. So let's talk about my salary before I leave firms. And then they're like, okay, how did you know that? Don't worry about how I figured that out. Just know that I know this, and we're gonna have a salary negotiation conversation right now. But like, you have to advocate for yourself. And it's one of those things where I feel like, going back to your question, like, yes, there's a risk. Yes, there's uncertainty. But you really do have to kind of advocate for yourself and just believe that it is going to work out.
I would say the culture within a university or a federal agency is more conservative in some ways because, you've got like here at U of I, you may have seen this, that all the employees, if you're a professor, it's a bit different because once you get tenure or you have something big happen, you might have a gigantic jump in your salary. But the rest of us, staff members, there's like the president of the university salary program every year. And this is very similar to when I worked for NASA. The president of the United States would announce a salary program for all civil servants. And the salary program is like 2% increase this year. So there's like, you're in a system where there's not really much you can do about that. Like it's possible to advocate for being promoted, but when I came into NASA, I was already at the top of the GS scale, and then I got promoted to senior executive. So I was kind of already at the top there. And then once you're whatever classification you're in, your salary is kind of just goes at 2% or whatever. So there's like that part of it was not uncertainty kind of a thing. But what does change if you're in a research context is, what kind of research should you be doing? And so that's where I find this to be, I don't know what the future is going to be, but that's why we're here to invent it. So I was working at NASA when commercial crew became a thing. So when it was like, oh, wow, SpaceX might get a NASA contract to go to the station instead of us building. So I was there when the shuttle program was decommissioned and SpaceX, Blue Origin, and not Virgin Galactic, that was the other one, Burt Rutan's program. Anyway, there's a third company. So I went down to Kennedy Space Center to talk about the fact that I had in my directorate the best computational modelers, and all of these companies wanted to work with them, but there's only 5 guys. So I needed to have like all these different like firewalls set up so that they could do their simulation studies, but not have leaked information across the different companies and all that. So that was like super exciting. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing exactly, but I was just down there to say, I got this capability. We know we're going to have this competition for this resource. What should we do to figure this out? So that kind of stuff to me is kind of fun, to think about how can we, help research go forward, help American competitors go forward, do cool new things. So the uncertainty is kind of like more about, what is the content of the research we're going to pursue and how should we invest in it? And I find those things to be like super fun. So at Beckman, for example, we've invested, as you may know, a lot of money to buy the 7 Tesla magnet that's physically at Carl, but it's half university, half Carl owned. So we're on the project manager for a human study on the 7 Tesla right now. And at Beckman, we're going to build out a synthetic chemistry lab, a molecule maker lab, which is just as one little room, and we're going to bust out a quad of rooms and make it bigger and like have more capabilities. We have all these cool robots that are going to do some automatic synthesis, and it's going to be great. So I find that to be really fun. So that's how I think about the uncertainty instead as an opportunity to invent the future.
me just add a little bit to think about risk. I forgot. So before I wanted to apply to the VP opening, I was talking to a friend who I know for a long time. So he said, I didn't say I want to apply, but I just said, oh, there's this role and so he's like, well, the thing is, if you apply, you don't get it, then you have to leave the organization. So at the time I think it did give me a bit pause to think, oh, is that true? Then so if you think about the risk, right? It is a little bit kind of like, because at that time, the next step for me will be the VP role. So if I don't get it, what does that tell you? That means the organization don't think there's a next step for you in a way, right? So that's kind of a little bit sort of reading between the lines. So there's a little bit of that, but I think you have to have a little bit sort of surround sound of yourself. That's why I do think getting some people, that objective and talk to more people, understand what you have contributed and do some self-reflection helps. And know yourself, that self-awareness is important. And I do want to get back to what Kerisha said about, be your own advocate. I think it is super, super important. And I think this is sometimes that is probably we could do better as women, leaders, if we, talk about, I do that with my 12-year-old daughter too. So she's in middle school. I tell her need to be her own advocate. Because one of the things, and people sometimes feel like if I do hard work, if I do good work, people is gonna see, right? And people will notice, and then I will get there. But if you don't tell people your intention, they will not know. So you have to let them know your goal, and then ask feedback. Like, for example, you say, okay, no, you know what? This is what I want to do in 2 years. What do you think? How I can get there? What can help I can get? So I do think asking those questions are important, and get your sort of intention is important to even for yourself to visualize it. So yeah, I definitely think sort of not necessarily just put your head down, but talk about your success, talk about your contributions, and own them is important. So.
I worry when trying to advocate for myself that I will be labeled as a troublemaker or aggressive. How do you guys, how have you or how would you deal with that?
Oh, that is actually one of my coaching goals, is to be more assertive. So I'm still working on it too. I think this is really a very common theme. A lot of people say that and say, assertiveness, when it's in men, it's an awesome thing, and it's in women, you often see as a 4-letter word. I think it's, you shouldn't think it that way. You are, you can talk about things. It doesn't need to come off as aggressive. The manner of delivering the content, need to be the right way. But the contents should still be, you have a position, you're advocating for your position, right? And, I have a role model in my organization, and she's like a president, of a commercial organization. When she talks in meetings, she's very soft-spoken. She never comes off as loud or trying to talk over you. She's actually very, respectful. But the way she knows her content, the way she conveys the confidence, you cannot you won't mistake that, right? So I think there's a way of delivering, but I think we should definitely put our foot down and make our position known.
So I don't know if you can go to like intro slide, but so you can see I'm with John Lewis, the good trouble, right? So I like to get into good trouble, right? So I understand that I am going to be, some people are always going to label me aggressive, but honestly, sometimes with people, it doesn't matter what you do. They're just going to say, oh, she stuck up for herself, so she's aggressive, right? And one thing that I like to do, and this is just part of my personality, is I like to have all of my family. I just want things to be fair, right? My mom tells this story, which now I'm telling, because I tell it all the time. When I was 5, I remember I was doing skating and my mom didn't have a camera. And so she couldn't take a picture of me. And I saw the kids getting their pictures taken. And some kids didn't get their pictures taken and some kids did. And it just depended on whether their parents had a camera or not. My mom tells me that I stopped the whole ending ceremony. And I told the audience that every kid needs their picture taken. I don't care. Like, so everyone get out the cameras, and like all the parents took pictures of all of the kids because it wasn't fair that some kids got their pictures and some kids didn't. Right. So I feel like, you know, sometimes you just do need to make the good trouble, right? As long as you understand what your motivation is. Now, I'm not saying just make a ruckus just because you can, you know, but if something isn't fair, I feel like you have to speak up. And like one thing I was saying last night is sometimes you can't speak up for yourself, but speak up for the woman coming behind you, right? Because they're going to do it to you, and then the woman coming behind you might get it 2 times worse. So you kind of have to nip it in the bud. Even if you feel like I can't stick up for myself, stick up for the person coming behind you.
Yeah, I think that I think that as the other panelists have alluded to, sticking up for yourself doesn't have to mean that you're physically loud or aggressive or the manner of speaking is rude or anything like that. I think it's good to be authoritative and have your facts. Like your very powerful example with the chart and all the data you had was like, I don't have to make a big, I'm not going to argue about this. I'm just going to show you this data and look what you can see here, you know? So I think having the facts at your command, having a representation that helps guide discussion, and saying that you want to come to a resolution on this issue. I mean, those are, adult, good quality things to say. So that's a good way to think about it, I think.
Any other question? Things we still have time for one question. Oh, okay.
Sorry.
You go ahead.
How did you take into consideration your personal life in making these decisions? I don't anticipate a family in the future. I would want to kind of have that be a factor in that decision. And so I'm just curious how you guys did that and how big of a role that played in deciding whether or not you were going to leave a more reliable job or go to a different part where you were just like we talked about the uncertainty of unknown.
Yeah, so for me, again, it was like, it was a matter of time. So my husband and I, we were okay with living in, with moving around. We weren't necessarily, tied to one place. But like I said, the circumstances dictated that things maybe became available that weren't before. So when we got married here in Urbana and had our first kid, and then he was like, oh, he was kind of a pain in the butt. But I'm like, am I gonna have to live like this? I don't know. But then again, it was sort of like he reached out to that colleague of his who left Wolf to go to Apple, and he was like, "Ooh, Apple was hiring." And then again, it was just serendipitous that a couple weeks later, I see this job ad. I'm like, "Ooh, this job ad sounds like it's really fun," and it's also in California. So then we just kind of take it one step at a time just to explore. And then we see that in our case, we both got job offers that were good. I was like, man. And then we ended up moving to California at the end of the first .com boom in 2001. So it was difficult. That was the hardest part of moving to California at that time, was finding a place to live, because Apple paid for us to have an apartment for 1 month. And after that, we had to start paying rent on it. And then all the daycares were full, so I had to pay for a nanny. So I'm spending $1,000 a week on a nanny plus, and I'm like seeing our little savings pile drift away. So that was really stressful, but we ended up getting a whole townhouse and that worked out okay. And then coming back here again was not, well, I wasn't expecting to come back here either, but it turned out, my sister got a job here. So we had a reason to come back, and they're like, oh, Champaign Urbana is more cool now. That's fun, That's a prerequisite for my husband might be able to places like he can imagine enjoying the restaurants, etc. So okay, that's like okay. And then, like I said, he had gotten laid off from Apple, just not a big layoff thing, but just like they were trimming his little group. So he got laid off, and this was in June of 2011. And he said that I told him, okay, just chillax over the summer. You can find another job, September here. But then 3 weeks later, I get the email from my sister saying, Beckman's got this new job opening. I'm like, ooh, that sounds good. So I ended up coming back here and interviewing. And I asked the Beckman director at the time, the guy that I know, I was like, am I the kind of person you want? I mean, like, maybe you want a physicist or I don't know. And he was like, no, it'll be great. So I had a really great interview experience. I'm like, man, this would be really fun. And the next step I did was I said, okay, I think I'm going to take this job offer, but I'm going to send my husband and my middle child out here to find a house. And they both love house hunters. And they're like so happy to geek out on buying an affordable house in Champaign, Urbana. So that all kind of worked out. So yeah, you take it one step at a time. And to me, it was important the time. The timing was just critical though, because if he had been happily at Apple, like then I'm not movable, And so yeah, you do have to take this stuff into consideration. But again, there could be trade-offs you didn't realize that are a big difference.
From my perspective, I think you have to be honest with yourself. Is family the reason you are not movable? Or is it that for a lot of reasons you are a little bit scared to make that move? So you're thinking about the family as I don't want to say excuse, but sort of using that as a way to make yourself that decision a bit easier. So this is actually exactly the conversation we had with my husband when we're talking about this VP role, because there are a lot of background I don't want to go into. It's like a lot of company politics a little bit too. So I'm like, right now I'm good, it's gonna be like all these, sort of uncertainties with this role. What if it didn't work out? And, all these people I don't know, yada, yada. So he's like, you need to be honest with yourself. Is this something you like to do or not? So, and it's never good timing for me actually, because so my youngest is gonna be 5 soon, but it's, before this VP role, honestly, I can leave I have a much more flexible a calendar, kind of relatively at my disposal. And I've done it a long time, so I know my team, I know what they do. I have a smaller team, right? So it's a lot easier. But now, because I have a team in different time zone, right? So I told my admin, I said, I need to leave the office at 5. Because I have to go pick up my son. So I would rather, just have meetings through my lunch break. So I actually don't have a lot of lunch break. So I try to kind of just munch a little bit, but I try to drop off my son and pick him up. It's actually more hectic than I used to. But the job itself is rewarding, and I feel like it's now and never, right? So if I pass this off, I will regret it. And then there are other examples because for some reason, I always get these opportunities when I'm in maternity leave or something. So the first time I got this bigger kind of expanded responsibility is 1 month into my second daughter's birth. So it's like literally 1 month, and my boss called me and said, I need to talk to you tomorrow. I was like, because I know there's an reorganization going. So like, okay, what, I was like, okay, then I offered. He didn't ask me, but I had a young team. So he assigned me all these young team. So I said, although I am in my maternity leave, can I come back for like a week so the team can at least kind of rally around me? I mean, technically it's my maternity leave. I don't have to go back, but I thought it's the right thing to do. So I did go back for like a week, despite my maternity leave. It's my own will. It's not like, and then I travel more because it's an international role. I have to travel right after I come back. So I think sometimes there's no good or perfect timing. You probably need to just mentally be prepared to work a bit harder. Now, nowadays, I do think it's a bit harder for me to move geographically because because my kids are a different school district and stuff. So I think, but again, on that note though, if it's about, balancing home responsibility and jobs, there's a lot more virtual opportunities nowadays. This is, to be honest, the really like when we're never gonna go back to the same old office bound, way of working. So maybe this is a good timing that will offer you more flexibility. So I think I like the word, actually I like a lot, manage the disequilibrium. Every day, there's always something, my son wants something like that. but when you sit down, you do it one day at a time, and then you focus on what you can achieve. So.
I have to say for me, this is something that's come up recently for me. So my office is out of DC and I just moved to Philadelphia just because my husband, he's like in Philadelphia, actually doing real estate. And so like he has to physically be in the city of Philadelphia. And we don't actually have an office in Philadelphia, right? I advocate for us having an office in Philadelphia. But, you know, it's one of those things where like this, you know, working from home time and the whole pandemic has allowed me to actually establish working from home. And I think a lot of times, sometimes as women, we think that some things are actually going to hurt us, but we don't understand the power in it, right? So the kind of standard is like this white male standard, right? And people don't understand the power in being diverse, in being a woman. And so like, they just assume that the person that you're dealing with is also going to be a white male, but sometimes it's a woman. And I remember even just as a story, one time I was dealing with a patent case and the patent examiner was a woman. She was pregnant. She was about to go on maternity leave. And the partner that I was dealing with could not like deal with her. Like he just was like, I can't deal with her. You deal with her. And I like talked to her and we just talked and I realized that she was, you know, she was like, oh, they have to induce my labor. I'm kind of worried. And like, we just talked about that, right? And just talking to someone on a human level in a role that other people will never, like, you know, the male partners will never understand that, right? Like, so I just kind of talked to her and just like, oh, it's going to be okay. And listen, I know someone you can talk to and talk to this person at this hospital. And they'll like, you know, and just, you know, so thinking that, oh, as a woman, maybe I have to move for work. I have to do this for work. You know, you're thinking that it's holding you back. But sometimes that's your power, right? And that is something that they won't know that that's your power. Like even my name's Kerisha, right? And a lot of people are like, well, your name's kind of exotic to me. Well, you know, somebody called me and they, you know, it was, let's say there was unrest in the country. And they saw my name and they said, I looked at the list of attorneys from Denton's and I saw your name and I knew that I could call you and talk to you. And that you weren't going to be nasty to me. And so like a lot of times people think like, oh, well, English isn't my first language. I'm not from this country. My name is this. And you don't understand the power in that because there's somebody else on the other line that's actually looking for you because you're the person that they want. So don't think that, you know, oh, the family is going to hold you back. Maybe the family is your power. And then even with me moving in Philadelphia and we don't actually have a physical office in Philadelphia, I got a call one day from one of the partners and he's like, hey, we have this client and there is this product that's coming in and it's infringing and it's at the piers in Philadelphia. And we need someone boots on the ground at the piers. And we were like, who do we have that, you know, is a patent attorney? And they're like, it's just you. And I was like, yes. And so I got this case because just uniquely because I decided to move to Philadelphia for myself.
One thing, I think one thing too, I think don't count yourself out too early. I heard someone, my friend, I don't remember, like she was saying like, oh, you know, I'm thinking about having a family. I'm thinking about like in a year I'm gonna do this. Maybe in 2 years I might do this. So I think I'm not gonna you know look for different or even like when the opportunity maybe this is not the right timing. I think you don't know whether you can overcome that or not. So don't count yourself out of the game too early or sort of overplay that because I feel like as long as you get the drive to make it work, you will make it work. And most of the time, there are good support systems. And, you know, generally speaking, my bosses are pretty understanding. So I think, you know, more and more, I think it's you will find a way through, but sometimes we kind of count ourselves out of the game too early. And overthink, you know, what could come and underthink how much you can actually handle it. So that's all.
Sure. Okay. Yes.
You know, when I interviewed at NASA, I was 2 weeks pregnant with my second child and I didn't know it. So then the job offer came like 2 months later. I was like, okay, actually, I have to tell you guys that I'm pregnant and I'm going to have this baby in May and I'm going to start in January. And they were like, okay, my boss said, we've got a whole system of donated leave by longtime employees. So even though you're brand new, you can tap into that. So I had 6 weeks off after like 4 months after I started work at NASA. And so they had, again, it was a great system. I didn't know about it until I had to use it, but things were good.
So thank you, everyone. Unfortunately, this is all the time that we have. So I would like to thank Kerisha, Patricia, and also Carol for their time and also insight for us. Please give a big round of applause for them.